This is the Youth Soccer Evolution Podcast, episode number 4, with Jake Gillengarten. Hello again, thank you again for joining me. This is Ernesto Diaz with the Youth Soccer Evolution Podcast. This week I had the pleasure of interviewing a very good friend of mine, Jake Gillengarten, who has great experience not only in playing but also in coaching. Jake, I must say, was one of the persons that got me into coaching, and I think he explains a little bit for you young coaches out there on how I continually ask questions and I was never afraid to learn, and I think that's one of the things that has helped me succeed in coaching. I recently had a chance to meet Horst Wayne, who is a German coach, who some of you are familiar with. And he talked about, and we're talking about Horst Wayne, who has consulted with clubs in Europe and national teams such as Germany, Spain, and Mexico, and very big, a very successful coach who has his own program and who has consulted with, again, national teams and European clubs. And he talked about how he didn't know everything yet and how he still continued to develop and learn new things as a coach himself. And I think that's very important for young coaches to realize, is that you can never stop learning. Always continue to ask questions. Always continue to develop as a coach and never stop learning. So moving on to the guest for today, Jake Gillengarten. Jake will discuss the impact of travel on our youth today. Jake has coached from U8 travel high school and even had a season where he had the opportunity to coach the Kalamazoo Outrage, which was a PDL team. But one of the important things that Jake talks about during the episode is one thing that I keep stressing is the environment, the culture that we create for our kids. If it's a soccer environment where we are encouraging them to play, and not just in formal training hours, but outside of formal training hours, that is so important. And I know that Jake talks about how he developed as a player. And one of the things that he thinks helped him out a lot was just that he loved to play. He was involved with his dad's high school team even as a young kid. And so he had that environment around him that allowed him to flourish into the player he became. So I think that's very important for kids. Again, we need to encourage them to continue playing. That free play environment is very, very important for their development. All right, so today we're here with Jake Gillengarten. Jake, what we'd like to do is learn a little bit about you. So if you can go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started playing soccer.
Definitely.
And give us a little overview so that way we can get to know you a little bit.
Okay. So, as Ernesto said, my name is Jake Gillengarten, and I probably started playing the game as soon as I could walk. I grew up in the Lansing, Michigan area. My dad was a local soccer coach for a high school there, and of course he had me start playing as soon as I could kick a ball. So that was, I guess, my introduction to the game. I definitely grew up around it all the time. I was kind of the little kid at all the high school practices, Probably most of the kids had to babysit me when I was really playing, but was around the game my whole life. Grew up, like I said, in the Lansing area. Played all through high school as well there. Played club. Went around and played for multiple different clubs through kind of in the greater Detroit area. Eventually kind of came home to the Lansing area for my last 3 years to play club there. Played high school, won a state championship. Went on to play in college. Went to a school down in Indiana to go play. After college, or during college, I kind of, as a on the side kind of job, I got into coaching then, and I coached for a girls' high school team. Was my first paid coaching position, I guess, and it was at Angola High School in Indiana with the girls' program there. Did that for 2 years while I was in high school, as well as whenever I would go back home, I'd kind of run training sessions with my dad for his high school. and then after college, I ended up moving to the Kalamazoo area, and there I got involved with TKO and started coaching with TKO, mainly sticking with kind of the older ages, like U15 and above. Coached both boys and girls there. Also coached at Loyal Arts High School for a little while. Eventually got into the PDL and my was kind of a player coach, I guess, in the PDL. Throughout time, I guess I had to go more professional route and was moving out here to Arizona, where I currently am, and I decided to continue coaching out here. So now I coach for a high school out here as well. As far as coaching-wise goes, I guess I've coached all kinds of players, from 8-year-old kids, just kind of getting in and learning the game, all the way up to I have about 5 kids that previously played for me that are now playing in the MLS. So kind of, and including one kid, one of my ex-players also got a couple national team caps. So kind of a broad range of players.
Yeah, I mean, you started from you didn't start at UA, but you coached from UA, and then you've coached the PDL teams as well. So that's a big range. And then Jake, we'll learn a little bit more about the overall experience, not only as a player but as a coach as well, today. And so we appreciate you talking with us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
First, what I wanted to ask you was, you talked about being around the sport as a young kid with your dad because he coached.
Right.
And if you can remember back, what made you fall in love with the game?
I definitely. My dad has always been kind of an inspiration for me as far as a coach, and the atmosphere that he created. It wasn't just about soccer to him. He really kind of made it a family style environment, and his teams were always very close, and not just on the field but off the field. And to me, that camaraderie and kind of the closeness of everyone on the team really appealed to me at a young age. And being a younger player, or even just a younger kid, when I'm 5, 6, 7 years old, and I'm hanging around with 17, 18-year-olds because they're all in high school, and seeing how close they were, and how good they were, and they, it wasn't just on the soccer field, but off the soccer field. They, were good friends. And just that atmosphere, I guess, is kind of what made me feel comfortable in the game. And then, of course, as I learned to play the game and get an appreciation of it, it's just one of those games that you fall in love with. I mean, soccer is a beautiful game, and I think it's one that, especially here in the States, is slowly gaining appreciation because the beauty of the game is starting to come out more and seeing more than just soccer is not about just scoring a lot of goals, but it's the runs off the ball and solid defending and things like that a lot of people are just now starting to learn about. That I think for me was one of the things that really made me love the game.
Who do you think had the biggest influence on you playing?
Well, I guess they would have to go a couple different ways. I look at it as far as influences. For me, obviously my dad was a huge influence on me because I was around him and around the game so much. So he was one of those guys that, constantly pushed me to become better and to really fall in love with the game. And, he took me everywhere, and I was kind of, in his back pocket, I guess, all the time for soccer. So, he was definitely one. Another one of my coaches that I had, he was one of my premier level coaches, and his name is Mr. Pettit. And Mr. Pettit really was probably one of the better coaches that I ever had, and he's the one that kind of really turned me on to seeing the tactical side of the game and really understanding the game more. So, that made me fall even more in love with the game. And then I guess as a player side, as a little kid, I was always, Maradona was one of my favorite players to watch because as soon as he got the ball, just the way he dribbled, I mean, his body would elevate, and he was so powerful on the ball. I really enjoyed watching him play. So those were kind of the three aspects of finding the family love through my dad, the tactical side through Coach Pettit, and then Maradona has always been my favorite player.
Yeah. How we talk a lot with kids about encouraging them to play outside of formal training with their team. How often would you say that you played outside of formal training with your travel team?
For me as a kid growing up, that was kind of I'm going to say at least 2 to 3 days a week. That's kind of what we did was just we'd get together, you'd find a park, you'd set up a couple bags or goals, and you just get out there and play. And it'd be 5-on-5, 6-on-6. However many kids you had, it was just neighborhood kids. You'd get out and play. And to be honest, I think that it's such a positive experience to be able to do that because it really promotes creativity. There's no pressure on kids. When I can remember the days of just playing in the park. There was one of my buddies and teammates lived right across the street from the middle school, and I can remember going to his house in '94, and we'd watch the World Cup, the Summer World Cup. We'd sit back and we'd all go there. Like my whole team would go there and watch the game, and then after the game, of course, we'd go across the street to the middle school, and we'd just play 5-on-5, 6-on-6, whatever we had, and it was there was no pressure to win. There was no pressure to perform. That was a lot of times where you try all kinds of crazy moves you might see, from the game that you just got done watching. But it was like a 2 to 3 day a week thing that we would just get together and play for fun. I mean, and I think that's such a big benefit for kids because it takes the pressure out of the game, and it really allows you just to have fun and enjoy time with your teammates or friends or whomever it may be. But it takes the pressure out of the game and just allows you to enjoy it, and those are some of your best memories that you fall in love with.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to explain to kids how much that will help them, if they just go out and do some free play with their friends without the coaches being present. I just don't think they understand it until they get older, how much it helps them.
I agree. It's a concept. As a coach now looking back at it, you want your players to have as many touches on the ball as they can, and any type of activity they can have on the ball, especially with other people. It just helps them to see the game more. It helps them to get those touches to increase their technical skill. And soccer, a lot of it is as you're younger and you're building your technical abilities. It's a lot of repetition, because it will take away from you having to think later on. And when you're out there having fun with your friends and just pick up games and things like that, you don't have to think about what's going on, and it starts to come naturally. And I think it really helps you evolve later on in life for all those, those natural movements when you get to a higher level of play.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Jake, you've obviously played a very high level of soccer, and as players, we experience a lot of highs and lows. Can you tell us about a time when you think or you thought that you were at your lowest point and you thought you weren't going to play soccer anymore? You maybe thought about giving up.
I definitely can, and to be honest, that was kind of when I went to college, and my first couple of weeks, I guess, at college. Coming out of high school, I came from a very successful program. In my 4 years in high school, I think I lost 7 games, and so I wasn't used to losing, and I was used to always being on like the best premier teams, playing all around, doing well, and winning was a big part of what I associated with soccer and my game. And when I went to college, I went to a team that was like a 500 team or a little bit above 500, and I can remember going there, and I had a good amount of schools that were very interested in me and kind of recruiting me before I ended up signing to the school that I did. And my dad kind of really pushed me to go to school because it was a very prestigious engineering school. And I remember, the first week or two, literally calling my dad every day saying, "Dad, I don't even want to be here anymore. I don't want to play. These players are not where I'm at." It was not what I wanted. And it got to a point where, for me, I had almost lost some of the love for the game because I thought it was all a winning matter. And, my dad definitely, talked to me and kind of talked me through it and had to remind me of, all the fun times that soccer was to and the love for the game. And that was probably the point where I was like, I realized, that I had lost that love and soccer had almost become more of a business to get to college. And it had taken away a lot of my creativity. And another time, like, to be honest, when I first moved here to Arizona, I kind of gave soccer up for 2 years. And what brought me back into coaching was the love and the mission of the game because, like I said earlier, that it's such a beautiful game, and to go without it is really a shame. So I think those are probably the two moments in my life where I kind of lost it and realized how much and how important the game was to me, and I definitely had to reevaluate and get back on track.
So is that how you overcame that when your position when you were in college, was that you just realized how important it was to you?
Yeah, I had to kind of switch my mentality from that of being a soccer is built on winning, to I had to switch it over to being an individual and see how can I become a better person. And to be honest, that kind of is what turned me into a much better player. I considered myself a good player in high school. When I hit that point in college and I realized that now, I have to push myself to become even better and to improve and to kind of carry the weight of things, it really helped me focus on myself and not just soccer. It helped me study the game more, to understand it more, to know how to position myself better. But it also pushed me more physically to go in and do all the extra things that, a lot of players don't quite know yet or don't quite understand. At the younger levels in high school and club ball and things like that, there's it's kind of like you just go to, a couple of trainings a week, you have games on weekends, and that's it. When you get to the higher level of play, it's not just trainings anymore. It's, 3 days, and then after 3 days you have to hit the weight room and your off season and all stuff. And I was not used to that, and so I had to figure out and push myself to, be in the weight room 4 days a week and be out on the track doing my own trainings and running stairs and kind of doing all those things to push myself to become better. And now it became not a love for winning anymore, but a love and a desire for me to become the best player that I could be.
Now, Jake, as players and coaches, we want to learn from you as much as we can. What is the best advice that you have ever received as a player or as a coach?
I think as a player, the best thing that I learned, and it was kind of something that I matured into, was just understanding the game. Understanding the game and being able to read the game and watch the play develop. And that came from a lot of studying the game and going and watching other teams play, or just, watching games, that were on TV at the time, or whatever it might be. But understanding the game and being able to see plays develop, helped me a lot as a player, because I could anticipate things a lot. And so that was probably, as a player, the greatest advice I could give someone is to, not just play the game, but learn the game and see the build up and see how things work, so you can, see all the movements off the ball, and you can see what's going on, not just with one individual player, but everyone else moving around it, to see the build up, and then that will help you defensively to defend better, and also to attack better, to see the open channels, things like that. As a coach, I think probably one of the best things as a coach, the best advice I was given, is almost sometimes just to step back, because as coaches, a lot of times we like to have full control, and we like to have a very structured practice and say, things have to go this way, and that's it. And as a coach, it's good to have a very structured practice and good to have, things flow in a positive momentum, but you also don't want to hinder the creativity of each individual player, and especially at a young age. Because, and every coach has probably seen it, where you get some players that they're like, oh, I play this one position and this is all I do and that's it. And to me, especially at a young age, looking at players at younger ages, you don't want to see that, because you want to let them grow as a player, and you want to let them try the creativity and to let them know it's not about just, this is my role, this is all I do. Like, feel free to expand in those roles and become a better player, because you never know where you may end up. I mean, it was, me as a player, I know when I was younger, I was that forward forever, right? I'm a forward, I'm a goal scorer, that's what I do. And as I got older and, eventually got into college, all that, I ended up being a center back because I could see the games walk and kind of control from the middle of the field. And a lot of that had to do with, coaches not locking me down in one spot. They let me grow, and I've seen it a lot with a lot of very talented players, where they might pull off a move or try a move, and maybe they don't get it. They might be in practice, and they may not pull the move off right, and coaches kind of get on them. And I would say, as a coach, step back, let that go, let the player grow, because if they kind of hone those skills in, you don't know, they could turn into to be the next Messi.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about that game intelligence. You first talked about as a player about the advice that you received, or the advice you were giving. I'm sorry, about game intelligence. It's so underrated with coaches and kids. I mean, just understanding the game, like you said,
Right.
it's just so underrated. You can be the best athlete, but if you don't understand the game, you're going to have a difficult time playing with the slower kid that understands the game and has that game intelligence. So that's very key. I agree with you. So Jake, what's one of your personal habits that has helped you reach your success as a player?
I think one of the big things that's helped me out is just dedication and commitment. That's kind of been a character trait that I have, and I think that it definitely has helped me succeed because every player, coach, worker, and it's not just a soccer thing. It's a life thing, and everyone is always they're gonna end up hitting a wall at some point. And it's that either you push on or you give up. And to have that dedication and commitment and to be able to keep going forward, I think that's one thing that definitely pushed me through and got me through, my hard times when I was kind of wondering, do I really want to continue playing soccer? Is this really what's for me? To be able to stick with it, stay committed, be dedicated, move forward, and then, to be honest, once I broke through that, that's when I really started to excel as a player. So I think, my best advice, on that one, especially for young players who are, kind of wonder what it is, stick with it. Don't quit when, don't quit right at the beginning. Push through, work through some things, and see what positive can come from it.
Yeah, well said. Now, Jake, earlier we talked about one of the moments in your life when you felt at one of your lowest points. Now we want to transition over to one of the proudest moments in your career, either as a coach or as a player. When you felt really proud of all the hard work that you've been through. Okay.
As a player, I'm going to have to say my favorite moment as a player was probably in '97 winning the state championship. For me, it was a big personal win because like I said, my dad was a soccer coach at the high school forever. I had grown up watching him go on. He had won 2 state championships before, and I can remember as a little kid, my dad telling me, one day we're going to do this together. And my dad was my high school coach, so to go on and win that with him, and not just, to have it with my dad is something that barely anyone can experience, and so to me that was a great feeling. But on top of that, you're looking at a group of 20 guys who you've grown up with, you've played forever, and even though you don't play club with them, these are the guys you go to school with every day. And I can remember in third grade being out at recess playing soccer with these kids every day. To accomplish something like that was a huge, as a player to me, was probably one of my proudest moments was go ahead and accomplishing that. As a coach, my proudest moment as a coach is, I guess it's not just one moment, but for me, it's when the alumni or the kids that you used to coach come back to you and tell you what's going on in their lives, to see them doing something with the game. Definitely the kids that I've coached, just starting out, when just sending some kids to go play in college, and when they come back their first year and tell you all about how their college soccer program was, it kind of makes your heart swell a little. For instance, I have one of my old players. His name's Bobby Shuttleworth. He's the goalie for the New England Revolution right now. Every year he does his spring training here in Tucson, and every year he comes out, and every game he has, he gives me 10 to 20 tickets. He brings my whole high school team out. He takes them in the locker room. He introduces them to players. Those relationships that you build with players as a coach, and later on they come back to you and they want to involve you in things. Those are things that a coach that I'm the most proud of.
Yeah, and did you coach him in high school or in the PDL?
I coached Bobby in the PDL. So yeah, he was he played in Kalamazoo there, and he came out of Buffalo University, and then a year or two later, he entered and got drafted by New England.
Great. Now, Jake, we want to go back a little bit more and learn about the development that you went through. And you said you started playing basically as soon as you could kick a ball. Your dad kind of had an environment, a soccer environment around you. At what point did you start actually playing like on a soccer team, whether that was ASO or travel?
Back then, the local YMCA had a league, and I want to say it was just kind of an introductory league. It was like, when you were in kindergarten, and they were kind of, it was just a co-ed young kids league. And I think somehow my dad probably pulled some strings and got me into that one like a year early. So I got into that as, like a 5 and 6 year old league kind of deal. So that was my first time actually playing organized soccer. And then kind of as I moved up, I went and played AYSO, first and second grade, and then in third grade I went to a USSF team, which is like a select level team, and I played like 2 years old, like with the fifth graders, but I was in third grade at the time to kind of start developing, getting into that, and by the time I was in sixth grade, I went to the premier level teams and started playing out of Detroit. I did that all the way until my junior year when I came back to the Lansing area to just play premier there.
You started playing premier around what, U12, U13?
Yeah, it would have been in sixth grade, so that sounds about right.
And you said you went over to Detroit to play on a club. So it must have been a pretty big club since you decided to go over to Detroit.
My dad wanted to get me involved at the best level I could be to go play, and it was a team that we were actually number 2 team in the state behind Vardar. Back then there weren't as many clubs, I guess. There weren't as many premier level clubs around, so you had CA, the capital area, which was the one in Lansing, and then you had about 4 or 5 in the Detroit area. Back then there wasn't as much an opportunity to play at a higher level, so you definitely had to travel a lot more.
But then you said that you came back to Lansing. What changed?
Yeah. But
hold on. I know there's probably some people that listen to this that Lansing and Detroit. How far is it from there? Because that's where you were going to play, but you were living in Lansing.
Right. Yeah. So it was about an hour and 15 minutes, I guess, every day that we do for practice, one way.
Okay.
So go ahead.
And then what changed? I had asked you that earlier. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. No. So basically, what changed is a lot of the reason that we went to the premier levels was to start getting seen more and being recognized more, to get that recognition in the state and for college recruitment. And so once I kind of established myself, and college coaches were starting to contact me and talking to me and things like that. Once I guess my dad and my mom and I kind of had a good feeling that college was going to be taken care of, then it became, okay, do we really want to put this travel burden on the family? And also I kind of wanted to come back home and play with some of the kids that I grew up with. So that was the main thing behind traveling so much and going to the other clubs was to be seen for college.
Okay. And then, again, the landscape has changed a bit. There's a lot more premier teams now. Oh,
definitely. I mean, like I said, I know at least in the Lansing area back then, there was just the one club, and now there's a handful of them in the Lansing area. And same thing with Kalamazoo. At the one time, Kalamazoo just had TKO, and now there's multiple clubs that have come up. I think that not only the popularity of the game has come up, but the education. And it's a great experience for kids nowadays to have.
Yeah. So after you returned to Lansing, how much do you think your development changed from going to a premier club outside of Lansing to coming back into Lansing?
To be honest, the coach I spoke about earlier, Coach Pettit, he was the coach that I had at CA in Lansing, and and he was the one coach that really opened my eyes to the tactical side of the game. So, I honestly am a firm believer that it all depends on the coach. I don't think you can say just because a club has a certain name with them doesn't necessarily mean you're getting the best training or they're going to give you the best opportunities or whatever. It all depends on each individual environment, because I think when I came back to that team, that's where I really started to understand the game more and learn more about the game, and I grew even more coming back to that, which was a smaller club, but worked out very well for me.
Yeah. So, what advice do you give to players then that want to travel an hour and a half to go to a premier team?
It's that's kind of one of those things that as an individual, as a family, you have to sit down and look and see whether you can work things out. To be honest, as a player, it puts a lot of strain on you because the way it worked out, my dad picked me up right after school, and it was drive all the way out to Detroit to practice, and then I do my homework on the car ride home. And I mean, that was like every day. And my dad and I had a great relationship because we were in the car together all the time. As a player, is that really what you want to do? And to be honest, I think that because there are so many more clubs now and there are so many more educated coaches and those things that it's not necessary to travel so much to get good training. As a player, I would say look into each club, look into who the coach is for that age group, and determine what's going to be best for you. But the name of the club, I don't think there are very few clubs whose name holds as much weight as what they used to, and so I think it's more you have to look at it from an individual basis and say, where am I going to grow the most as an individual player? What team is going to be best for me? How is the coach of each team? And you kind of evaluate each situation and then kind of choose what will work best for you.
Do you think it matters the age of the player when they make that decision?
I think it probably does. As the players get a little older, meaning kind of starting getting into their high school years, a lot of it becomes a social thing. And so I think that changes a lot of kids' minds as to whether they want to have more of a social life or whether they, want to dedicate everything to soccer or not. So I think the age does kind of matter, and it also matters as far as recruiting-wise. I mean, you're seeing a lot of it depends how you want to use soccer. If you're looking at it to, pay for college, and you look around nowadays, there are colleges signing kids younger and younger, every year, and going out and starting to look at kids as they're, maybe freshmen in high school. And so it's kind of thing you have to weigh out where you are as a player and what you're looking to do, and then kind of make that decision.
Yeah. Jake, what's one resource that you would want to recommend to either parents, young coaches, or players?
I would say I actually went online a lot just to look through drills, kind of searching drills. There was a Coach's Corner website that I would use. I honestly think the best resource, though, is not necessarily the internet or a book. I really think it's getting out there and networking with other coaches, sitting down and talking philosophy with coaches, and just watching games and learning and talking about them. I think that will really help out, and don't be afraid to, especially if you're a new coach, don't be afraid to ask questions and go to the coaches that are coached at a higher level and talk to them about things, because a lot of people think, oh, they might be kind of pompous or they're much higher level than I am. I can't talk to that person. You'd be surprised at how willing coaches are to help. And Ernesto, I'm going to use you as an example because for those that don't know, Ernesto and I did coach together. And I think when I first coached with Ernesto, your energy level and your wanting to learn, I mean, was a true inspiration, to be honest, because you were one of those
Thank
guys.
you.
You were one of those guys who was talking to everybody all the time. Well, what do you think about this? And what do you think about these formations? And how do I work on these drills? And you weren't afraid to go talk to people. And I mean, I can remember many nights, sitting around with you and a couple, Ashley, which Ashley was another guy that we coached with and played with, and just all of us sitting down and talking about games and watching games together. And I think just that conversation and bouncing ideas off of each other and getting drills from other coaches and things like that, I think those are your best resources.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jake. I recently, I didn't ask this, but I met a coach that had consulted with Barcelona, and even he said, look, he had asked some questions. He goes, hey, you never stop learning. I mean, if he says it, and he's over there consulting with Barcelona and other professional clubs, and he says, you got to continue learning because you can never stop learning. I mean, who are we to say that we know it all,
Right, definitely.
So that's an excellent point. Jake, and so we want to learn again from your experience, and I wanted to ask you this question, which I normally ask everyone. If you had a 5-year-old son or daughter with all the experience that you've had and your knowledge, what would you do if they wanted to play soccer? What would you do to optimize and maximize their development as a soccer player?
Yeah, I think definitely get them involved in the game as early as you can, as early as they're interested in. Even just if it's, going out and kicking a ball with them, try and get them involved in organized soccer. I think it's great how at the younger ages now they have, smaller-sided games, and they really try to help promote the growth of younger kids. For me, I think a huge benefit is, especially at those young ages, is starting to teach technique. And like I touched on earlier, the repetition of the game, as a child, especially, 5, 6 years old, whatever, starting to teach them the proper technique to kick a ball. How to hit the ball with your laces, how to hit the ball with the inside of your foot, that you lock your ankle, all those little things, and then slowly work it up, and how to bring a ball down, how to use your thighs, how to use your chest, and just do, go in the backyard with them and kind of work on those technical abilities so that it starts to become natural to them and they don't have to think about it later in the game. But then also you have to just be fun and just play with them to allow that creativity to grow. You don't want to focus too much on one area or the other. I know for me growing up, it was, my dad would give me a ball and go in the backyard. We had a big brick wall, and it was knock the ball against the wall and learn different ways to trap it, see how you can put spin on the ball, and all those things. And I think that just constantly working on that technique over and over and over helped me later on as a player to have to think about it for it to come natural. And so the more technical skill that you can work on, and the fundamentals of the game are the most important. Even just juggling as a little kid. Go in the backyard and juggle, go in your basement, juggle, whatever you do, it just helps get more touches on the ball. So the more you can promote touches on the ball, I think it only benefits you as a player.
Jake, what about the Olympic Development Program? What are your thoughts on the Olympic Development Program? ODP, as they call it.
Yeah, I think ODP is a great opportunity. Has provided very well for individuals that can work their way through it and go up and play. So I think there are lots of benefits to ODP. To be honest, it's a great political game. It's something great to have on your resume. And I don't want to take away from ODP at all, because I think that it's a wonderful program. I think that they produce a lot of good players. I think they have a lot of very knowledgeable coaches that are directing throughout their entire staff. But I also want to stress that I don't think it's a must-do for players to go do. I don't think that I think there's a lot of players that fly under the radar that may not come from ODP. They're outstanding players and go on to play at very high levels. I respect ODP. I think that it's a great thing to have. Great experience to at least go do. To go on and see how you can progress through it. Since you asked about it, just so happens last year I went up to a national camp. It was in Phoenix. Got to see a couple of trainings up there, and a very good experience for someone involved. It kind of depends on the player. It takes a lot of devotion to get to that level. So definitely a good program, but it's kind of when you have to evaluate as an individual whether that's what you want to do or not.
And Jake, we've reached the end of the interview. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you think is important to know about player development in the United States?
No, I think it's the player development in the United States is definitely up and coming. It's nice to see how much the game has grown. And it's funny because right before you called, I was watching the Manchester City and Sporting Kansas City game that they're playing right now. And the announcers were talking about, if you look at soccer over the past, 10, 15 years, how much it has evolved into the fact that now we have in the MLS alone, you have soccer-specific stadiums. You have, back-to-back sellout games. And it's really, soccer is really becoming the sport of the youth now. You're really seeing up and coming. I mean, you look at all the clubs that have come up, and just like in your area, Ernesto, where you see a lot of players. I mean, Eric Alexander is a perfect example that comes out of Portage, who he made a couple national team caps. I mean, just the way the game has evolved, I think, is great, and a lot of that has to do with people trying to learn more about the game, and people like yourself, Ernesto, doing things like this to try and educate people more, and to get more communities involved and get more people involved to be able to bounce knowledge off each other. I honestly believe that the greatest way you learn as a coach is by talking to other coaches and constantly pushing forward. So, as a coach, as a player, and being older and looking back at it now, I really appreciate what you're doing, because I think you're really really helping the game evolve, and not just from a player standpoint, but from coaching and from a whole community and all.
Like you said, we do want to make this a community as much as we can, and even though you're a few thousand miles away from us, if a listener has a question for you, can they send you an email?
Yeah, definitely. Feel free to send me.
Can you leave your email for us?
Sure. It's my first initial and last name. It's
Thank you again for joining me on Youth Soccer Revolution Podcast, episode number 4. We'll be back with episode number 5. Until the next time, if you want to reach out to me, you can reach me at Ernesto at youthsoccerevolution.com, or you can visit our website at youthsoccerevolution.com. If you want to get a hold of Jake Gellengerten, if you have any questions for him, or you'd like to reach out and thank him for being on the podcast, all his information will be on the show notes at youthsoccerevolution.com.